I'm Julia Turner, and this is the Slate Culture Gabfest Channing Tatum on the Lam edition. It's Wednesday, October 15th, 2025, and on today's show, we discuss Roofman, the new film that stars Channing Tatum as a crook hiding out in a Toys R Us and raises new questions about both Derek Cianfrance's filmmaking and the powers of Tatum's charm. Then we'll look at The Chair Company, HBO's new Tim Robinson joint, which turns his comedy of frustration into a conspiracy thriller. Finally, we'll be joined by The Atlantic's Katie Weaver, who will no doubt once again teach us new words while discussing her fascinating piece on historical reenactors and what it's like to slog through the mud alongside a horde of mostly men in period-appropriate boots. Today, I'm joined by Steve Metcalf. Hello, sir.
Hi, Julia.
And sitting in for Dana Stevens, we have the wonderful Rebecca Onion. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
When it comes to what your family eats and drinks, you know your choices matter. You're the expert because you know what fits your life. And getting it right starts with good information. That's why America's beverage companies are sharing more information about our ingredients at goodtoknowfacts.org. No spin, no judgments, just the facts straight from the experts for more than 140 beverage ingredients. Visit goodtoknowfacts.org.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
I think we were all excited to check out Roofman, in part because we three are culture critics who have been charmed by Channing Tatum in projects past and intrigued by the work of director Derek Cianfrance. And I think possibly we're sold a little bit by the marketing, which describes how Channing Tatum's lead character, Jeff, a small-time crook on the lam after a prison escape, hides out in a Toys R Us and then somehow falls for Kirsten Dunst at a church social. Why is he out of the Toys R Us? Why was he in the Toys R Us? I don't know. It hooked us. So we watched it and we will discuss. But before we do that, let's listen to a clip where we'll hear Tatum's character describing his canny knack for figuring out how to make escapes and survive on the lam.
Most guys, when they escape, get caught in the first few hours. They go as far as they can, as fast as they can. And that never works. The trick is to stop. Find a place no one will look. Sometimes the best hiding places are in plain sight. A place where people are too preoccupied to see you. So I kept quiet as a mouse.
All right, Steve, I'm going to start with you. I think because I'm remembering how moved you were by Magic Mike and Channing Tatum's performances therein, in the Magic Mike universe. What did you make of his characterization of the charming small-time crook in this film?
Oh, he's very good in the movie. I mean, you put your finger right on it, exactly where I wanted to start, because I mean, the movie's enormous pains on the level of the page, right, to make this guy likable, because it in its broad outlines, it tells the story of a sociopath, right? Someone who, because he can't get his life together financially after coming out of the military, but who's exceedingly bright, takes up a life of crime. The life of crime ruins the life of one family with whom he's had, he's a wife with whom he's had 3 kids. And then after becoming a prison escapee, he sets up another life with 2 kids with a different family. And because you know the ending of the movie, I mean, I knew nothing about this as a true story when I went in, but as you watch it, you know how it ends. There's only one way this guy could ever be at liberty to tell his story or have his story told in its fullness. That's because he's going to get caught eventually. And therefore, you know that he's going to destroy the happiness of the second family. That in its broad outlines, paints the picture of a human being who's like a failed human being, and in his failure has brought down, substantially mortgaged the possibility for happiness of the people he purportedly loves. So you need an enormously likable actor, like, for example, in Channing Tatum, to pull it off. And Tatum does yeoman's work in service of that. I find him a totally captivating actor. He's got all of the equipment or sort of, biological infrastructure for machismo, and he himself is not macho, right? He's just an enormously good-looking, very cut, uh, buff, guy. And he doesn't tend to. I can't remember an act of violence involving Channing Tatum, a character Channing Tatum is playing. I can remember him dancing, right? But the movie begins on this sort of campaign of likability to cut against the general plot outlines of the movie. The movie begins with him wanting to buy his kid a bike, his little daughter a bike, and it's very nicely done sequence. It's quite heartbreaking. And because he can't buy the bike, he's initiated into a life of crime. It seems a little Hollywood, but fine, I'll go with it. It's nicely done. But there was a part of me that was like, dude, you want to buy your kid a bike? You're Magic Mike. Like, just find the local Chippendales. Like, I mean, I cannot
Yeah.
get Magic Mike out of my head. But in all seriousness, I do think that the movie struggles against this central problem. Instead of saying, if you noticed, based on a true story, it says, this is a true story. I was like, that's an interesting little bit of rhetorical inflation. Curiously enough, I found out two things, right, which are maybe irrelevant to the critical, assessment of the film. One is that, um, in fact, he was beloved, right? He wasn't regarded as a sociopath, both by the woman who he shacks up with here, played by Kirsten Dunst. In real life, she seems to have nothing but fondness for him and what a gentleman he was. And the church that sort of semi-adopted him, which is the means by which they meet. And all of the church people apparently are like, no, he's just a wonderful person and part of our community. So I thought that was kind of lovely, but there's an amazing revision to the truth, which is that a key component of the movie is that the Kirsten Dunst character works in the Toys R Us where he is hiding out, and they form the relationship, and that was entirely a consequence of fiction. But I found it very hard, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think. I found it very hard not to think about the damage this guy was committing by pursuing this life. And Tatum does a remarkable job of overcoming that, but not entirely. And I thought the movie just ultimately didn't cohere.
One thing that really interested me in watching this is, again, that the director is Derek Cianfrance, who I think came onto the scene making Blue Valentine, which is just an absolutely bleak, heartbreaking romance, and then followed it up with The Place Beyond the Pines, and I think then has mostly been doing some TV work since, and emerges with this movie, which was marketed as less dark, and I think sort of is less dark, but then the actual story is as dark as the previous interest, and there's sort of a tonal confusion there. Rebecca, I'm dying to know what you made of the film.
Totally. Yeah, I found it bizarrely stressful, despite the fact that it was really fun in a lot of ways. Like, you see Channing Tatum's whole butt. Like, he's like naked in this one scene when he's running around trying to get hide from the manager of the Toys R Us, who's played by Peter Dinklage. And, there's a lot of like fun Channing Tatum stuff where he's like dancing in the aisles and humping a inflatable T-Rex. And like the setting of the Toys R Us is doing a lot for the movie in terms of sort of like a hit of nostalgia, a hit of fun, but it's also sort of like a continual reminder of what the Jeffrey Manchester character feels like he can't give his family, like, which in actuality, like he's fixated on toys and sort of like, being able to have a good birthday party with like a fancy cake and this kind of stuff. Whereas, the female characters in the movie keep saying, all we want is your time. Like, we want your presence. And he kind of can't ever kind of like buckle down to provide that or like understand how to provide that, which is really sad fundamentally deep down. I actually had never seen The Place Beyond the Pines, but watched it this weekend because I read something on Letterboxd that was like, this is very much like it. And in A Place Beyond the Pines, the Ryan Gosling character is a very similar kind of like a 20-something guy who's like at complete loose ends. And in this case, he's like a stunt biker for a carnival who's covered with tattoos and clearly is never going to be able to become the father that he wants to be when he discovers that he has had a baby with a character played by Eva Mendes. But it's the same sort of beats of what he is worried that he can't provide. The Gosling character in that movie really wants to buy a crib for his baby, really wants to be the one who gives him ice cream for the first time. And in a moving sequence, he goes, I want him to think of me every time he eats ice cream from now on. Like, he wants to be the provider. In Roofman, as Steve is saying, there's a way that, with the presence of Tatum, you're supposed to it's supposed to be funner. Place Beyond the Pines is not fun at all. It's very, I won't spoil it, but very dark things happen to most of the people in that movie. But in Roofman, because of the Toys R Us setting, because of Channing, because the church is like lovely, like it's like the best advertisement for an evangelical church in the suburbs that I've like ever seen. The preacher who's played by Ben Mendelsohn and his wife are
unrecognizably, by the way. Like, I didn't realize it was Ben Mendelsohn until I was reading reviews afterwards. It's like, damn, that guy has range.
Yeah, seriously. He was great. And he made you want to stay for the supper and like eat the spaghetti, like, maybe join the choir or something. But as Steve is saying, at the end of it all, it's actually kind of like this guy just never really figured out what to do with his talents or like how to fit into the world. And as you're saying, having Tatum play him is tough because even if it's not Chippendales, like surely a person who's got those observational skills, was in the army and looks like that and like is like that charming, could find something. I guess influencing wasn't an option in 2004 when the movie is set. But
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to think about him and Gosling in the same breath, right? I mean, Gosling also a character capable of great charm, great humor, but maybe also more believable, portraying weaselly desperation or something. Like, there are a couple moments in this movie where you see where the movie toggles over into like accepting how dark it is, where I suddenly had this flash like through parting clouds of like, oh, there's a version of this movie that's like a masterpiece about capitalism and failed masculinity that it doesn't quite achieve. And to me, I don't want to spoil the sequence, but there's a sequence where Tatum, in his desperation to charm Kirsten Dunst's family, Lee's family, acts dangerously, like is a little bit wild with the children, in front of the children. And it's clear that Lee does not like it and is very shaken by it and is very alarmed by like, who is this charmer I've let into my life, and what am I doing, and what am I exposing my children to? And the way Dunst plays that scene is incredible. And actually her whole performance from there forward, where she begins to be wary of this charmer and his charm takes on additional desperation, is suddenly like the movie kicks into this different gear where you can see the charm as panic. Like, the charm is panic, the charm is feverish, the charm is fucked, But there's too much of the movie where the charm is just charming, I think.
Yeah.
Like, we're just sort of like, isn't this guy a great time? Woozy boo. Like, even at the beginning, like we start inside his mindset of like, I got to get my girl a bike. And obviously the only way to do it is to try to be a kindly asshole to these McDonald's employees. Yeah. And the movie just doesn't quite have that parallel consciousness at the beginning of like, this is both logical and fucked. You're inside the Tatum character's logic for like the first 2/3 of the movie. And it's still a decent time. And I agree that the setting, the setting of the Toys R Us is incredible. It's like being inside a Wayne Thiebaud tableau of glorious, delicious looking cakes or something. Like, everything looks fun. I want a novelty Thundercats long sleeve tee to wear, or whatever the hell he's in, Totally. I love that when he starts sneaking out and biking around town, he wears a bike helmet.
I thought that was so cute. And it's like too small because it's a child's bike helmet from Toys R Us.
Yeah. There's so much in it that's charming, but that final 20 minutes where Kristen Dunst really starts cooking, you're like, oh, there's a whole nother movie under here that feels
Right.
more like a Derek Cianfrance movie. I think I've said his name 5 different ways in this segment. I just want to apologize to Derek, despite my
Well, one of them was right, so.
Yeah.
hopefully.
That's perfect.
Anyway, just the moment in that pivotal scene where you see what's happening in her face at the end,
Yes.
and you're like, this
And
is the
she's like,
person he
"Fuck."
really is, who has like a fucked relationship to risk.
Just one thing I'd love to point out is, in addition to Kirsten Dunst, who's exceedingly good in this movie, right? It's always tricky when you take a Hollywood actress who has become famous in part because of their capacity for a kind of glamour, in addition to their remarkable talents, and then put them in the position of playing a working class woman. But Dunst does it so seamlessly, so beautifully, with such incredible dignity, and she's the underlying power of the movie. And the second performance that is note perfect. I've never seen someone do this better than Peter Dinklage in this movie. The person who has a little authoritarian fief, and because of its tininess, rules it ruthlessly in order to inflate their own self-importance. And there's not a moment of scenery chewing, even though he's a huge fucking asshole. And he's just every time he's on screen, you're like, he is that person. That is exactly every glance, every turn away from the eye to eye contact to looking at his own computer screen,
Yeah.
to back to like doing the books. Every piece of it is such an exquisite, nicely sliced decision making down to the micro level. It's really I hope he gets a supporting nomination for this. I think he really deserves it.
I mean, both he and Dunst are incredible, and Tatum is too.
Yeah,
He's great.
Part of what the movie does is make you worry for the first half of the movie that the movie doesn't know he's bad. And then the movie admits that it knows he's bad. And then you can relax a little bit into it because you don't feel like in league trying to put one over on Kirsten Dunst or something. Like it's either in the writing or the direction or something. Like the setup is too fun for it to quite land, although it probably also is what made it seem more fun than The Place Beyond the Pines, which did not look fun.
No, not a good Saturday night.
And before we go, a third note perfect performance from Lakeith Stanfield.
I was going to say.
That's an extraordinary performance too. I mean, the truth is all the acting in the movie is wonderful. It's just that Tatum is given an impossible job, I think.
Yeah. I honestly would not tell people not to see it. It's interesting. It's unusual. It's like an unusual movie in a bunch of different ways. And there's just, honestly, for just the final 20 minutes of Kirsten Dunst's acting alone, and there's plenty more to recommend it, I think it's worth checking out if it appeals to you at all. The film is Roofman, directed by Derek Cianfrance. God damn it. I'm sorry I didn't look it up beforehand.
We like your movies.
We like your movies, Derek. And it's Roofman. Check it out.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks makes it easy to find the perfect gifts and holiday looks that suit your personal style. The holidays can be a lot of things: fun, relaxing, heartwarming, and yes, sometimes a little stressful. But Saks is a great place to go, not only for holiday shopping for others on your list, but for things you could wear to festive occasions over the holidays. I spent some time on their site looking for things I might want to give or things I might want to wear myself, and wound up getting really excited about a dress called the McDougall plissé cape sleeve cocktail dress. It's this gorgeous, very sort of Rosalind Russell style 1930s gown, I guess you'd call it, not quite floor length, with really crisp pleats and a built-in cape in midnight blue. Just something you really want to put on and go out and sparkle. Sometimes going and just window shopping online can put you in that gift season mode and make you start thinking about what you might like to wear and what you might like to give this holiday season, whether it's for an office holiday party, a cozy night in, or a vacation getaway. Saks has everything you need. If you're looking for shopping to be personalized and easy this holiday season, then head to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to shop for everyone on your list.
All right, now is the moment in the show where we talk about business. First, we have to tell you about our bonus episode this week, which is available only to Slate Plus subscribers, Slate Plus subscribers. This week we're talking about the great and now lamentably late Diane Keaton, just a luminous, intelligent Hollywood actress, up there with Katharine Hepburn, with Irene Dunn, all of the greats. And luckily, we're going to be joined by Dana, Slate's film critic. Dana Stevens is going to come on. She had to talk, even though she wasn't able to record this episode otherwise. She had to come on and talk about one of her true heroes in Hollywood. If you're listening to this feed, it might mean you are not yet a Slate Plus subscriber. That is not going to cut it. I got to tell you, Slate Plus, like, yes, it's going to offer you a host of benefits. It allows us to do the work we do. It keeps the lights on here at Slate. It is really enormously important to what we do. But you do get a host of benefits, including ad-free versions of this show, a bonus episode every week for this and a bunch of other Slate podcasts, and, of course, the opportunity to read as much as you like on slate.com. It's also the opportunity to support Slate and our show. To sign up for Slate Plus, get all those benefits, you can go to slate.com/cultureplus. And if you sign up there, you get a big boost for giving us a little boost as the people who wooed you over. So again, it's slate.com/culture plus. Okay, let's get back to the show.
The Chair Company is a new HBO comedy from Tim Robinson, the much beloved, very bizarre, mostly known as a sketch comedian behind I Think You Should Leave with his writing partner, Zach Cannon, who is also his writing partner and co-creator of this show. Robinson is a cult figure in comedy known for demonstrating extreme frustration and taking it to the max. We talked earlier this year about his film appearance in the movie Friendship by director Andrew DeYoung, who also directs these episodes. And The Chair Company is something new. It's not sketch. It takes a Tim Robinson character, in this case, a functionary at a mall developer company whose name is Ron Trosper, who seems to be relatively happily married to Lake Bell with 2 kids who seem to like him, despite the fact that he is just as much of a Tim Robinsonian weirdo as we've ever seen on screen. And the action begins when, having recently been promoted to help run a big, significant mall project, Trosper gives a speech at a company meeting, then returns to the little row of chairs on stage, sits down in his chair, and completely wipes out when the chair collapses beneath him. The sort of thing that a normal person would be mildly embarrassed by, shrug off, and move on from. Not so our hero, Ron, who becomes fixated on this incident, this chair company named Tekka, and what possibly could have caused this debilitating moment in his life. In this clip from the show, we will hear Robinson's character Ron on the phone with customer service, trying to find someone to hold accountable for the chair catastrophe.
I witnessed a problem with a chair.
I'm very sorry to hear that, sir. What was the problem?
It was a big problem. There might be a big problem with Tekka chairs, and I'd like to discuss that with the manufacturer. Can you transfer me?
Unfortunately, I can't do that, sir. But if you have the order number of the chair, I can request a replacement.
No, I don't want a new chair. I want to discuss the problem with someone who can do something about it on a large scale. Do you have a contact number of somebody at Tekka who could do something about it on a large scale?
It appears that we are not authorized to give out that information.
You can't connect me to the actual company that makes the chair. That's really weird. Don't you think that's really quite weird?
I don't know, sir.
I think it's really quite weird. There is a massive problem with one of their chairs that could have major consequences, could cause mass casualties, and there's no way to tell them? Carla, that's really quite weird.
Hey, Ron.
At the end there, you hear him furtively slamming the phone down when his boss walks into his office. One thing that comes through in that clip is the work that the score is doing, really treating this like the parallax view. Anyway, Rebecca, I'll start with you. Can you please share your previous relationship to Tim Robinson's comedy and what you make of this long form and conspiratorial exercise?
I'm a certified stan of Tim Robinson. I would say my husband and I really love his I guess it's a sitcom, the Comedy Central show Detroiters, which he did with Sam Richardson. It's a much, I don't want to say softer, but like it's not as agitated of a feeling as the subsequent stuff. I think you should leave, love it. Every skit in that is so short that by the time you start to feel like your heart is going to jump out of your chest because the situation is so awkward or stressful or angry, the skit is over. So that's ideal. Friendship, went to see it, was really glad that I was sitting in a movie theater and forced to sit there to see it, because I think otherwise I would have been looking at my phone or second screening it in some way. And in some ways, I sort of wish, just because it was so awful to see this guy, in the case of Friendship, who's kind of ruining his life, just like ruining it. He has a pretty good life and he's ruining it, just due to his personality. And I started Chair Company and thought, oh God, it's going to be like Friendship. This is stressful and terrible. And it's another like family man who has it pretty good and is just like unable to stop being himself. And through his inability to stop being himself, he's going to end up just like completely alone. But instead, the Chair Company kind of unveils this world where everybody around Ron is just as insane as he is, with maybe the exception of his family, interestingly. But everybody outside of the house, you walk into, he's investigating, who's in charge of the Chair Company and who created this situation for him. He keeps in the way of, a procedural thriller, or a thriller. He keeps walking into these situations. So he'll walk into a diner and, he's intent upon quizzing the owner of the diner about someone who's been in there who he thinks is associated. But everybody in the diner is like yelling at each other and like throwing food and hitting each other and just going crazy. And there's no reason for it. It's just like the way the world is. It's just such a, I think you should leave moment. It's utterly redeeming for me, of the entire dynamic of, oh my God, this guy is ruining his life. It's like, maybe he's ruining his life, but also this entire world is populated by people who are always like one moment away from doing something completely weird, and maybe antisocial and maybe ruining their own lives. It's just like everything is on a hair trigger in a way, but it's all executed in a really funny way.
Oh man, I got to admit this was one tough sled for me. I didn't know Robinson, but I did watch a couple of episodes of Detroiters, which I found charming, really genuinely and weirdly enchanting. This character is not just this sort of maxed out schlemiel type. He's like kind of a monster. He's depicted as a thin-skinned monster. He's not just ruining his own life. He's kind of ruining or threatening to ruin the life of his family with this obsession. And I have to say, I don't, okay, there are two things I don't really understand. And for people that, if this show works for the two of you, I'd like to hear how, because the insuperable things for me are, first of all, I just don't, when you portray this world in which everything is as chaotic in outer concrete material reality, or the social world is as chaotic and prone to screeching and kind of going to 11 immediately, as his own inner life. I found that the humor was just like, there's a heavy who's sort of like Mike from Breaking Bad, a kind of older dude who will fuck you up, and they just, every scene begins with a small thing going wrong and then this maximum elevation immediately to the two of them, high-pitched yelling at one another. I just don't find it funny, and I don't understand why it's supposed to be funny. Like, that really is what loses me. I'm like, what, two grown men screaming at each other? And then the second thing is that I saw someone in a way helpfully compare this to David Lynch, where there's something inherently broken and surreal about the world. And in the logic of the piece of fiction, in the logic of a Lynch film, right? Like just classically in Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet and sort of all his films, the world is somehow essentially a broken place, and people aren't acting as exactly as they should, and you feel overwhelmed, and you're not quite sure whether the more reassuring thing is that there's a vast conspiracy which at least imposes a degree of cogency on on the universe, or there is no conspiracy, and it's just chaos and randomness. But there's something about the surreality of Lynch that does attach to our own experience of America, as an out of control place. And so it's got a visionary quality. Whereas, like, I don't see what this particular comedy attaches to. I mean, it almost gets there because, to me, the one thing that really works is, funnily enough, the sort of traditional element of the plot, which is that this guy had a maximally embarrassing, like humiliating moment at a moment that was exactly, it was supposed to be the moment of career triumph, and it undermines him. And he's already been set up as a hypersensitive semi-loser in the opening, restaurant scene with his family, where he gets into a ridiculous argument with the waitress. And so I liked the idea of being unsure whether it's his obsessive need to try to replay that moment with him not as the loser by finding the monstrous conspiracy behind it, right? And riding the ambiguity of whether he's just trying to make up for his own failure, or whether there actually is a conspiracy, and that it's the chair company and like what they're doing to the chairs. All of that to me was sort of interesting, but then it got dragged down into these weird, screechy encounters one after the other, these set pieces, and I did 3 episodes of this. I couldn't
Oh my God.
continue. It just didn't work for me at all.
I will say, I maybe I can split the difference here. So I should disclose here that I know some of the folks behind this show, so you can take my view of it with whatever grains of salt you choose. But for me, I thought this really elevated like I'm an admirer of Tim Robinson. My husband loves the sketches, is obsessed, will quote them. I've like watched a bunch. I enjoy several of them, but I have not, I'm just but far from a completist, never seen Detroiters. Um, and what I liked about this show is I feel like it offered a context that gave kind of like a purpose and meaning to the Tim Robinson shtick, in that I don't know if a personality can be a dystopia, but he has like a broken personality, right? Like his personality is wrong. Not him, Tim Robinson, but him, his character. His character like fixates on the wrong things, cannot modulate responses, is like maladapted to the world always. And it's awkward to watch. And you're right, that part of the appeal of I Think You Should Leave is that it's short. But this show turned for me. I had the same feeling you did, Rebecca, of like, oh, is this gonna be friendship again? Where you just are like, oh, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Um, and there's a moment, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler at this point to say, where you begin to realize like he's not wrong. And there is something weird about the chair company. And that's where the show turns. And you're like, oh, what if instead of the Tim Robinson shtick being just about one weird guy who gets into funny situations, it's like he's not maladapted. He's appropriately adapted to how broken the world is, and the world is just as fucked as this persona is. And that to me like makes the whole thing like interesting, fun, dark, amusing. And then I feel like they still find ways to put these interesting little goofy moments and sketches. Like the way the scenes unfold are kind of like a succession of I Think You Should Leave sketches in certain ways. But it feels like it's building towards something, or a theory of something, or um, expands out into, well, I don't know if it's Lynchian, but it's, I, like in the process of trying to watch the screeners for this show, I had a bizarre technical interaction that I won't complain about, but like that caused me to like sit for 25 minutes in various holding patterns while I waited for various apps and devices to talk to each other so that I could be officially credentialed as permission to watch the screeners of the show. And I was like, dude, is this performance art? Like, I feel like the last time I logged into this system, it was easier, and that part of why I wanted to listen to that clip of him talking to the customer service rep is like, the world is infuriating. In some ways, the appropriate response to the world is uncalibrated rage and like extreme annoyance at how the world seems to completely disregard any rules or norms that may once have governed it. And so the sort of structure and scaffolding here for what his comic persona is, to me, like really enriches what he's doing and kind of advances it in a way that I didn't feel like Friendship did.
I totally agree. I think that I think it's really interesting that HBO didn't give us the last episode. I believe there's 7 or 8 altogether, and we didn't get the last one. And I'm just like, how are they going to tie all this up? What will the reality be revealed to have been? But I totally agree that, like Steve, if you're looking for the parallel to a Lynchian kind of like surreal critique of the reality of American life, or the way American life can feel, the idea that there's some dad who gets pissed off because, as he puts it at one point, everybody makes bad stuff and you can't find them to talk about it. That's not an exact quote, but something like that. And then he becomes the dad who is like basically a conspiracy theorist. And at one point he shows his daughter, he brings his daughter in on it. Both his kids are older, like his son is about to graduate and his daughter is about to get married. So they're, grown kids. He brings his daughter in on it, and his daughter kind of like humors him and like nods and smiles and like sort of agrees with him on some stuff, but you can tell that she's like, uh-oh, dad is like going off the deep end again. But what it is like he's going down a rabbit hole that's familiar to us viewers from being alive in 2025, where almost every like little tiny thing that happens, you're like, holy shit, can they do that? Like this is not like, this can't be the way it is. And then as he's like picking at the threads, he's revealing these like extremely dark pockets of things. So I don't know, Steve, does that get you on board at all?
I'm afraid it doesn't. So I acknowledge its relevance as a kind of enshittification allegory. And that, in a weird way, does sort of work for me. I just don't find it's the devolution of that into these sketches that involved mutual verbal abuse at high volume. I just don't find it funny. I mean, I can't go back to it and watch more of it. It's just out now grating.
All right. Well, the show is The Chair Company. It's from HBO. It's either the apotheosis of Tim Robinson's brilliance transmuted into incisive commentary about the enshittification of modern life, or just a little bit too abrasive for some people. So pick your poison and let us know what you think. If you check it out, we're at culturefest@slate.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, just hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Emmy Award winner Kerry Washington returns as Dr. Virginia Edwards in Audible's supernatural thriller The Prophecy, Season 2. This audiobook also stars Giancarlo Esposito, Dulé Hill, Renzi Feliz, and Ebony Obsidian. In The Prophecy, Season 2, the battle between good and evil reaches new heights in a heart-pounding sequel that pushes the fate of humankind to the edge. Follow every twist and turn as Virginia and her miracle son Joshua flee from Detroit, pursued by the sinister Luther Bell and his Morning Stars cult. As natural disasters erupt, Virginia must embrace being both mother and chosen protector, but will it be too late? I know in my house there is rarely not an audiobook of some sort playing. We've kind of gotten to start sharing audiobooks now, so I'll listen to one that's great and pass it on to my husband and daughter. We also play audiobooks for my dog when we leave the house because we think it keeps her calm to hear the things that she's always hearing when we're home, which is somebody listening to an audiobook. So species of all kinds use this service in my household. If you're an Audible user as well, don't miss Kerry Washington in their new Must Listen, The Prophecy Season 2. To hear it, go to audible.com/prophecy2. That's the number 2, and start listening today.
We're delighted to be joined today by Katie Weaver, a staff writer at The Atlantic, to discuss her new article, part of The Atlantic's gigantic, I think it's a sesquicentennial package. It might be a different kind of centennial. Anyway, it's been about 250 years since this country was begun, and the Atlantic is checking in a colossal fashion. But one portion of the check-in is that they deployed Katie Weaver to examine and also be a historical reenactor reenacting various Revolutionary War conflicts. And we could not resist the idea of reading this piece and discussing it with Katie. Hello and welcome, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back.
All right, can we start by describing a little bit what it is you set out to do in this piece? Who did you go check out, and what did you have to do as you checked it out?
So I knew nothing about any kind of reenacting, including Revolutionary War reenacting, before I started this piece. And the first thing I discovered is that for someone who has no background in this and also doesn't really intend to necessarily make this a huge part of my life moving forward, it's very hard to break into. It's hard to figure out what you need. It's hard to get the stuff. It's incredibly expensive to get the stuff. So I just started cold reaching out to kind of anyone I could find online who seemed like they might give me advice about how to do this. And I also was sort of hemmed in by the constraints of writing about this for a magazine that has, firm publication dates. I was like, okay, well, I need to have done everything by June, basically, which kind of eliminates a large chunk of reenacting that was going to happen this summer. And also this summer, 2025, was only the 249th anniversary. So things are happening sort of in real time. So I was sort of limited to the very beginning of the revolution. So ultimately, I hooked up with some of the staff at Fort Ticonderoga, which is in New York, and they very kindly agreed to let me tag along on a multi-day event that they had planned. They were going to be reenacting a foot journey by some men from what is now Vermont to go capture this fort that at the time was, a British fort. The men were also kind of, I guess, technically British at that time. That's a whole thing I get into in the story. Yeah. Everyone involved was British people. So they agreed to let me come tag along, like camp out with them. The one thing they said was that I could not do that in the period clothing with the period gear, which everyone else was going to have. I was sort of embedding like a modern war correspondent with these men and three women total, I think, in their Revolutionary War era duds and camping out with them. But they said it would just literally be too hard for me. They're like, you physically will not be able to keep up with everyone else and talk to them and maintain your sanity if you also try to dress up. And they were 1000% right. I am so glad that I did not try to do that. I cannot emphasize how correct they were. So I did that in May. And then I also did a reenactment of the Battle of Bunker Hill in June. And for that one, I did dress up. I dressed up as a man one day and a woman one day.
Katie, I loved your piece. I learned a lot from it. And one thing I learned is that I am an idiot who did not know that there were differences between the kind of people who do Civil War reenactment and the kind of people who do Revolutionary War reenactment, which you write is like a very like politically different thing to do. Maybe politically, I don't know if that's the word that I would apply to it, but that they're just like the people have different intentions and different like takeaways from it, I guess. And so my question for you, first of all, is did you know that before you started, or did you try Civil War reenactors first, a la Tony Horwitz, and then say, actually, no, I'm not going to do this?
No, I did not know that. And actually, so one of I think probably a very plausible theory about why this is that people just tend to reenact things that happen close to where they live. And so a lot of Revolutionary War things did not happen in like the Deep South, where a lot of the big Civil War action occurred. So I think if you kind of map modern political affiliations onto it, that could probably explain a lot of the gap. A lot of it happened in New England, which is very, very blue. And I would say that, not that there weren't any people who had slightly more conservative politics that I met, but definitely I was sort of surprised by how
that this, it's a hobby that involves like guns and, a real obsession with the past. And so I just thought, oh, maybe these people tend to be more conservative. And that is, by and large, was certainly not what I experienced. And I also should say I did set out specifically to do only revolutionary reenacting because it was tied to this special issue.
Oh,
so
yeah.
but some people do, a lot of the people I met don't only do Revolutionary War reenacting, they do other time periods as well, up to even like I met people who did Vietnam War reenacting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can really, I guess once you get a little taste, sometimes you you then you don't stop eating. You keep taking bites out of every war up until you hit the present.
It occurs to me that we love history in both its high and its faux and its vulgar forms because we know how it ends, right? And as people say, history is written by the winners. Our interest in history is almost always from the point of view of the winner, even sort of implicitly. And so there's like an enormous attraction to placing yourself back into a middle of a conflict in which it seems uncertain, but it isn't. And I just thought that was an interesting theme running through the piece, that reenacting exploits nostalgia. But what was really fascinating about the piece is it ends up maybe curing you of it as well. Is there an element of that tension in the piece?
Yeah. I think that's right. And one thing that a couple of reenactors pointed out to me that I thought was so interesting was that there are still a lot of kind of first-person sources from the 18th century that are not super well known. So even just for hobbyists getting into this, it's something where, yes, we know ultimately what happened, but you can still, as just an amateur historian, if you are, willing to go in person to historical societies or whatever and do the research and just uncover things and physically go through papers, you can find information that is in a way new to the world that people have just forgotten about for centuries. And it's not going to change the outcome of the war, but it can still give you, new details and perspectives. And several people mentioned that they really like that aspect of it.
I mean, you speak to this in the piece, but like, what do you think all these folks get out of this? Like, what draws them to it? Why do they spend so much money and time on it? Why do they slog through the mud? Like, is it patriotism? Is it historicism? Is it, I don't know, they like the stuff? What is it?
I think they get a tremendous amount out of it. I should say everyone who I interacted with for the story was lovely, was interesting, was smart, was fun to talk to, was excited to tell you everything that they had ever learned in their life about this stuff. But they presented it very well in an interesting, dynamic way. I think they really like the social aspects of it. A few people mentioned to me, including some of the youngest people, like, sort of teens and college students who I met, that they like that it's not just sort of like going to a bar or sitting at home playing video games. You're sort of physically getting out and doing something. And if you have any sort of slight interest in history, I think that a chance to really learn more about history will always deeply appeal to you. So they're doing that. I think also for families, it can be a nice family activity. There are kids running around, and no one has their phones out. Or if they do, they're kind of hiding it behind a book. They're really trying to not sort of break the illusion for the public. So yeah, I think it's just honestly, I think it's pretty fun vibes. And I think also a lot of these people, probably all of them, I'm certainly the only person there who had like no sort of dexterity at all with making anything, but they're just good at, like, they can figure out how to make clothes. And then I think it's really satisfying once you learn how to like sew an entire sort of suite of clothing for yourself to do that and have it look really great and to get better and better and better at it. And they're sort of always in this process of like, oh, how can I make it better? How can I make it better? Which is not how I live my life, but nice for others.
What was it like to wear the clothes when you finally did at the Bunker Hill reenactment?
It was hot. It was very hot. I hated how I looked. I felt so ugly. I didn't want anyone to see any images of me. I was so glad that there was no one there who I really knew. It did make me real, it made me realize how much I cling to like my little drugstore makeup routine to not have it. I was like, oh my God, this monster. So I actually ended up feeling a little bit more comfortable in the men's clothing just because when I was a woman, I was like, oh, now I just kind of look like an ugly woman. But when I was a man, I was like, well, I don't care if I don't have makeup on. I'm a man. They were They weren't it wasn't like I probably have worn more uncomfortable modern clothing, but it definitely you are aware of the fact that you are wearing a lot of things. There are very many layers of things, and it was emphasized to me that, I wasn't wearing, like, seasonally inappropriate gear. Like, this is what they would have been wearing on a June day, in Massachusetts, and it was hot. There was a lot going on there, but you could kinda get, a breeze through the skirts when you're a woman, and you also sort of learn some of the utility of the various layers and the hats and things. But it was, my regular clothes, I would say, are easier to wear just because there are way less of them. It's not so many
Yeah.
layers.
Yeah. I love reading historical romance novels, and those ladies are never as sweaty as they should be. Like, they're always Claire in Outlander is, like, usually, like, doing pretty fine and kind of fresh, but the passage about the clothes, I was like, "Oh, this, like, really gets at, maybe the appeal of this hobby," like, which I'm never gonna do either, but I think I get it a little bit, seeing it, your actual reaction to, like, the smell and the sweat of it.
Mhm.
First of all, the way you landed the piece was so really it was exquisitely done. It was just note perfect. And in it, what it gestured to is not just that it's sort of the opposite of what we might look for or toward in the past or look to get from the past when we reenact or think about history in whatever way we do. It's the opposite that when you're embedded in what is clearly a turning point or feels like a turning point in history, you're in medias res and you're overwhelmed. There's a psychological impulse and also an aestheticizing one, a literary impulse to reach into the future and imagine future historians looking back on your moment with the cause decided in your favor, hopefully. And in fact, we do it all the time now. We're at a historically uncertain moment. The stakes couldn't be higher. And people often frame their response to a new fact or a new horror in it. Historians in the future will look back on this moment, and there's so much hope packed in that seemingly neutral phrase, which is that there will be a future. In it, there will be historians, and those historians will side with us. So some, paradigm of truth telling will survive, and it'll be partial to our own point of view. And you capture that so beautifully with this poem that you found. Is there any way you'd read the poem and then the last paragraph of your piece, which is just pitch perfect?
Sure, yeah, let me find it. I think the other thing that's kind of interesting, thank you for those lovely compliments, by the way, that is so, so kind, is that this struck me as a sort of rare instance where the person was right, that they actually were in the middle of a historic moment that historians ended up looking back on, because I have a feeling that people are just kind of always thinking that, and 99% of the time they're wrong, and no one really cares about the moment that they're living through. But this one, what we actually did go back and look at this, they were dead on. Okay. They pierced the veil of distant years, loved us, although unborn, and purchased with their arms and purest blood the bright inheritance we now enjoy. The sentiment strikes 21st century ears as unremarkable. We are accustomed to adulating the revolutionaries. But in fact, the word sweat on the page. The poem, titled The Anticipation for the 99th Year of American Independence, was published in 1780, in the middle of the war. Independence was a fantasy, not yet secured. The writer dreamed of someday being remembered kindly, hopefully by Americans. The end.
I think the pretentious critical theory word is prolepsis, right?
I don't know.
Rebecca,
Did
no
you tell me?
Oh, no, I have no idea.
Oh,
I'm Googling it.
when you sort of imagine the future, imagining you in the present.
Mm.
Anyway, mine is like the future reenactors will have such an easy job recreating our moment because it's just a bunch of people on laptops and phones. Yeah, all right. The joke doesn't land, so we can skip it.
The anticipation and answering of possible objections in rhetorical speech, the representation of a thing as existing before it actually does or did so, as in, he was a dead man when he entered. All right. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right. Katie Weaver, the piece. What was the name of the print version of the piece? Into the Britches?
Yes, Into the Britches.
Okay. It's Katie Weaver in The Atlantic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. So Dana's out today, and she's the one who got the Mint Mobile swag. She's got the SIM card, and word on the street is she's completely into it. She's thinking about keeping it because the service has been flawless. She's digging it. She's sticking with it. So ditch overpriced wireless and their jaw-dropping monthly bills, unexpected overages, and hidden fees. I mean, you gotta hate that, right? All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/culture. That's mintmobile.com/culture. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Hello, Finney. Did you think our story was over?
Just a grabber.
This Friday.
You're dead.
Dead is just a word. Critics are saying Ethan Hawke is pure nightmare fuel. Oh, Finney. Discover the secret behind the mask. What do you think happens when you die? It's time to find out. Black Phone 2, only in theaters Friday. Rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
All right. Now is the moment in our podcast when we endorse. Rebecca, you're our visitor today. Why don't you go first?
Yes, I have a book to endorse that I really enjoyed. It is a memoir called Next of Kin by the chef Gabrielle Hamilton. And I felt compelled to make it my endorsement because I very much enjoyed it when I read it in ARC this summer. And then I saw that it's kind of getting, the person who read it for the Times didn't really love it that much. I loved it. So this is a book about her family of origin and all of the sort of ideas that she had about her family of origin when she was younger and how they have all sort of fallen apart through her life in different ways. And if you have grown up in a family where there's sort of a mythology of having a happy family, you will recognize many of the dynamics in here. It is a beautifully observed memoir. There are parts in the middle of it that I won't spoil that are kind of like unfulfilling, which I think is the reason for the Medium review. But I think it's really worth reading, if only to read such lines as her mother self-characterizes as a person who loves kittens, but hates cats, which is to say a mother who likes babies, but does not like older kids, which is so useful. And she elaborates on this idea. We all know women like that. Anyway, so I really recommend it. It's called Next of Kin by Gabrielle Hamilton, and I believe it's being published today, October 14th. So it's new.
Oh, that does sound good. And she's such a good writer generally. I feel like I've read other journalistic work of hers and always been like, damn, she can write. Intriguing sell. Thank you. Steve, what you got for us this week?
Julia, I think it's been a while since I've been over the moon for an indie band. And I've got one now. Unfortunately, they've just put out a record and have just announced they're breaking up. They're playing their last show in London in like a week or two. And if I were a billionaire, I'd PJ it over there and catch it. But I'm not. So, but the band is called X Void. So X is as in like my ex, as in my ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. EX void as in like the void in my heart. And if you want to start somewhere with them, their new record is called In Love Again. I think it is like first to last cut, nose to tail, just a great indie rock record. And it's got earworms. There are a couple of songs that start out like they're going to be slightly esoteric and off-putting, but they find a melody very quickly that just let me put it this way. You know the weird thing about an earworm, which is like there's that magic moment where you just want to hear it more and more and more. Like you just need it further embedded in your DNA. Like you want to get it in your essence. And it's just before you need to play it over and over again in order to make you hate it so that you can get the earworm out of your ear. And I'm at that magic moment with a song called Swansea, which is the first cut from the album In Love Again. And I just want this recording to end so I can listen to the song Swansea. So start with Swansea, Ex-Void. They arose in part out of a band called The Tubs, which I also love, but check them out.
Steve, you know what song I have that relationship with right now?
Uh-oh, what?
Honey, off of the new Taylor Swift album.
I knew you were going there, Julia. You get that? There's a special tone to your voice.
Yes. I will say, we decided not to talk about Taylor's new album because she gives us endless occasions for discussion, and we've discussed her recently, and we don't need to discuss her again. But my pocket review, for those who care, is that it's not a very good album, but weirdly, like the least heralded song is this song, Honey, which is about all of the different condescending ways in which people use endearments for women, sweetheart, honey, etc., and then what it's like when you find your true love, a football player, and he calls you honey. But it's like a great little clever piece of songwriting, and it's very catchy, and it's also kind of circular and doesn't quite have a release, which I think is part of why you get stuck in the re-listening piece of it.
Honey. When anyone called me sweetheart, it was passive aggressive at the bar, and the bitch was telling me to back off.
So anyway, that's my Taylor Swift song from this album. It's my deep cut.
By the way, there's a song in this record I like a lot.
Which one?
I think it's Ruin the Friendship. Is that the SoCal?
Yes, that's the other good
song.
one. And it's also the other one of the 12 songs that's not in the top 10 most listened.
I think she has a future. I'm very bullish.
Good. Okay, my actual endorsement for this week is, are you guys familiar with Tate's cookies? Mm-hmm. Those like hard, crispy little disc cookies that they sell in the green packages?
Nah.
Oh, yes.
Really?
Yeah, don't know.
What kind of failed bougie are you? That's amazing.
I don't want to know.
You must be having even more artisanal cookies. Anyway, their cookies, they're kind of like, they were sort of indie and rare, and now you can find them in every grocery store. And they come in these squat little, almost Pepperidge Farm shaped bags, but they're green. And they are like very thin, flat, buttery, crispy, crumbly chocolate chip cookies. They're not necessarily my favorite kind of chocolate chip cookie, either store-bought or homemade. But on Serious Eats, which is a very good recipe website, one-time home of J. Kenji Lopez Alt, and also current time home of many great food writers, there is a Tate's dupe recipe, like how to reproduce the Tate's style cookie at home. And it's the kind of store-bought thing that when you eat it, you're like, no one could possibly make this. This is like a wonder of American chemical food manufacturing, and the dupe recipe really works. We made it as a family a couple weekends ago. Unfortunately, what it produces is Tate's cookies, which again is just to me not as good as a Toll House cookie, but it's like kind of fun as a science and a magic trick. And if those cookies are your jam, then you're really in luck, because this recipe works like a dream and asks you to do all kinds of like bizarre sort of voodoo seeming exercises in a manner that reminds you just how much of baking is like a chemistry experiment. And anyway, the Tate's recipe dupe from Serious Eats. Cook yourself some of those and then listen to Honey while you eat them. All right. You'll find links to some of the things we talked about today on our show page. That's slate.com/culturefest. And you can email us at culturefest@slate.com. Our introductory theme music is by the composer Nicholas Bertel. Our producer today is Benjamin Frisch, and our PA is Daniel Hirsch. For Rebecca Onion and Stephen Metcalf, I'm Julia Turner, and we'll see you next week.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu? Is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.